It begins with a plate most of us would never dare to touch. A steaming broth, the surface rippling with oil, and inside it, coiled flesh, glistening skin, sometimes still resembling the creature it once was. To modern eyes, it looks repulsive. But in ancient China, that same dish could be hope itself. You see, for centuries, the Chinese world wasn't ruled just by emperors or dynasties. It was ruled by fear. Fear of sickness, famine, weakness, and death. Medicine, as we know it today, didn't exist. When a fever struck, when bones ached, when age caught up, people turned not to pills, but to nature. And in nature, reptiles became more than animals. They became cures, talismans, even bridges between the mortal and the divine. Take lizards, for example. A creature so ordinary, so forgettable, crawling silently along walls. But to ancient Chinese healers, lizards weren't pests. They were vessels of vitality. Their ability to cling to vertical stone, their eerie stillness, their sudden darting speed, it all suggested hidden powers. People believed that boiling them into soups could restore lost energy, heal respiratory troubles, and strengthen the blood. In texts dating back to the Han Dynasty, powdered gecko was prescribed as treatment for tuberculosis. Imagine being a sick farmer, gasping for air, clinging to life, and being handed a bowl of lizard broth. Would you drink it? If the answer meant life or death, you probably would. And lizards were only the beginning. Frogs, too, found their way into the pot. The amphibian's ability to leap, to live both in water and on land, made it a symbol of transformation. Some families boiled frogs in the hope of passing on that vitality to the sick and the weak. Snake meat was believed to renew the body, just as snakes renewed themselves by shedding their skins. Turtles, with their slow movements and astonishing lifespans, became medicine for longevity. The symbolism was irresistible. You didn't just eat an animal, you absorbed its essence. But here's the unsettling part. This wasn't seen as strange. To them, it was rational. It was logical. Nature was full of lessons, and to consume its creatures was to borrow their strengths. Frogs gave you energy, snakes gave you renewal, turtles gave you time. Every bite was a transaction. Every bowl was a prayer. Still, not all of it was voluntary. Picture a young bride in a rural village centuries ago. On her wedding night, the elders bring a steaming bowl of snake soup, insisting she must drink it to ensure fertility. She trembles, but drinks anyway, because tradition is heavier than appetite. Or imagine a sick child, feverish and weak. The family believes evil spirits cause the illness, and only lizard broth can drive them away. The child swallows bitter spoonfuls, not because it helps, but because everyone around insists it must. These weren't just meals. They were rituals forced into the fabric of life. And the rulers? Their tables were stranger still. For emperors and the elite, these foods weren't only about health, they were about power. To consume crocodile meat was to demonstrate dominance over the most feared predator of the rivers. To drink snake wine was to show mastery over venom itself. Picture an emperor seated high above his court, tearing into crocodile flesh while ministers bowed before him. This wasn't dinner. This was theater, propaganda written in blood and bone. But here's the twist that makes it all more chilling. Some of these strange meals worked. Not in the mystical sense people imagine, but in quiet scientific ways. Frog skin really does carry antimicrobial compounds. Snake venom contains chemicals useful for lowering blood pressure and easing pain. Turtle shells are rich in calcium, which strengthens bones. The ancients didn't know biology, but they observed patterns. They saw results, and so they believed. It's easy to laugh at them now, to call it bizarre, barbaric, grotesque. But pause for a moment and place yourself in their shoes. Imagine your child burning with fever, no medicine in sight, only frogs croaking in a nearby pond. Wouldn't you try boiling one, desperate for a cure? Imagine your body worn from endless labor, and a neighbor swears lizard broth restores strength. Wouldn't you take a sip? When survival is at stake, disgust loses its grip. Desperation changes everything. And that's what makes this story more than a curiosity about what people ate. It's about psychology. It's about how fear and hope twist our choices. These weren't strange Chinese meals. They were survival strategies in a world without antibiotics, without science, without safety nets. Reptiles and amphibians weren't exotic, they were lifelines. But as you'll see, what started as medicine often grew into obsession. The more people believed these creatures carried secret powers, the further they went. Some animals became sacred meals for fertility rituals. Others became offerings against spirits. And the strangest part? Even emperors, with every luxury at hand, clung to these traditions. They too feared death. They too wanted strength. And so, like peasants in muddy villages, they ate lizards, frogs, snakes, and turtles. The question is, did it save them? Or did it only feed illusions while time and mortality marched on? Now, let's step deeper into the world of ancient China, where food was never just food. Imagine a crowded apothecary shop in a dusty village market. The air is heavy with the scent of dried herbs, animal hides, and powder stored in jars. Behind the counter, a healer carefully grinds the bodies of dried geckos into a powder, then mixes it with wine. He tells the anxious customer that this remedy will treat chronic cough, restore virility, even give new life to failing lungs. The man doesn't question it. He drinks, because in a time before modern science, belief itself was half the medicine. But this belief didn't stay small. It grew into a powerful cultural force that shaped generations. Lizards, frogs, and snakes began appearing not only in medicine, but in everyday cooking. Recipes survived, whispered from elders to children. Lizard soup for stamina, frog porridge for fertility, snake stew for courage. Even turtles, symbols of the cosmos itself, became food for immortality. People believed that by devouring creatures who lived long lives, they could trick fate, cheat age, and cling to the gift of time. Yet, hidden beneath these traditions was something darker: control. If you were a ruler in ancient China, how do you keep your people obedient? You convince them that rituals, strange as they may be, are necessary for survival. Marriage feasts often included strengthening soups of snakes or frogs, not because of taste, but because of pressure. To refuse was to disrespect ancestors, to risk angering spirits. The dish was never really optional. It was a quiet form of command: eat, obey, believe. And at the very top of the hierarchy, emperors themselves became prisoners of these beliefs. Records tell us that some emperors consumed potions made with animal parts daily: deer antler for virility, turtle shell tonics for longevity, powdered gecko for stamina. Their fear of mortality drove them to desperate extremes. A meal wasn't simply a pleasure. It was a negotiation with death. Picture an emperor in his golden robes, sipping snake wine, convinced he was swallowing strength itself. While outside his palace, peasants choked down the same creatures for survival. The gulf between rich and poor vanished in these strange moments. Both ends of society were bound by the same hope: that eating nature's strangest animals might keep them alive. But here's where the story twists again. These traditions didn't stay in the past. They echoed through the centuries, lingering long after dynasties rose and fell. Even today, in parts of rural China, people still eat frogs, snakes, or turtles for health. Traditional medicine still prescribes powdered gecko as treatment for respiratory issues. Snake wine is still sold in markets, a glass bottle with a coiled serpent trapped inside, waiting to be poured for strength. The old beliefs never died. They only adapted. And here's the uncomfortable truth: sometimes they were right. Science has proven that frog skin does contain antimicrobial peptides, powerful chemicals that help fight infection. Snake venom has inspired medicines for high blood pressure and blood clotting. Turtle shells are rich in calcium, useful for strengthening bones. What ancient Chinese people didn't have in labs and microscopes, they replaced with intuition and observation. They saw patterns. A man ate frog broth and survived fever. A woman drank snake wine and regained energy. Word spread, belief grew, and tradition hardened into law. But there's another layer, the psychological one. Eating what disgusts us can also change us. Imagine the courage it takes to swallow a creature you fear. To the ancient Chinese, devouring a snake wasn't just about nutrients. It was about absorbing its fearlessness, its power to strike. To eat a turtle was to borrow its patience, its endurance, its secret to longevity. These meals were half nourishment, half ritual theater. By swallowing the creature, you proved to yourself and to your community that you had taken in its essence. It wasn't just food, it was identity. Still, not everyone believed. Some voices whispered doubts. Were these really cures, or just desperate superstitions? The irony is that skepticism rarely mattered. Tradition carries its own power, one stronger than logic. A boy who grew up watching his parents prepare frog broth for illness would one day do the same for his children. Belief became inheritance. And that brings us to the most fascinating part of the story, survival. In the end, whether these dishes worked or not, they gave people something priceless: hope. Hope that a sick child would recover. Hope that age could be delayed. Hope that death could be tricked. Even if the remedy was strange or foul, hope made it palatable. And sometimes, hope itself is the strongest medicine of all. So the next time you hear about ancient Chinese people eating lizards, frogs, snakes, or turtles, don't just laugh or gag. Look deeper. See the fear of death, the hunger for life, the struggle for survival, and the cleverness of humans trying to wrestle meaning out of a dangerous, unpredictable world. These weren't bizarre meals. They were lifelines. They were stories written on plates, swallowed with faith, served with desperation. And maybe, just maybe, that's not so different from us today. We still swallow strange pills, chase miracle diets, and trust cures we don't fully understand, because deep down, we're the same. Afraid of sickness, afraid of weakness, afraid of death, hoping that what we put inside our bodies might protect us from what lies outside. That's the legacy of the ancient Chinese table. Not just a history of eating reptiles, but a mirror reflecting our own endless search for survival, strength, and immortality.